There's a huge variation about whether people, you yourself, your clients, want to have people in their images or not. So sometimes you don't want people, you just want the architecture to shine through. But other times you want people to understand the story of what's going to happen in the spaces that you're visualizing. So you all know I'm super excited about Enscape, and one of the reasons is the 3D realistic people that they have in their library. And the library is growing. Every time I look, there's some new content in it. So here's my SketchUp model, and here it is rendered in Enscape. And you can see it looks a little odd, like what is this white person? How does she become this? So this is actually called a proxy. It's just kind of a placeholder that links to more complex geometry outside of your model, which just helps you control your model size. But the beauty of these 3D models, if I take and, it's tricky working, usually I have a double screen. If I move her around, and I'm just going to move her over here and bring this back, you can see that the lighting changes when it falls on her. So the beautiful thing is that with these 3D models, you get this incredibly accurate, lovely lighting. So it's lighting, all the edges of her blouse and her clothing, just like it would in real life. It's also casting a shadow just as it would in real life if I put her back where she was before. You can see now she's getting this lovely modeling on her face and on the baby. And the lighting has changed. So if you're just trying to Photoshop in a person, they're going to have the lights and the shadows that they have in the original image, unless you're super skilled in Photoshop and have a whole lot of time. So just to show you how this works, if I wanted to bring in another person, here's actually the Enscape asset library that's underneath this little tree. I've just preloaded it here. So all these people are available as photorealistic 3D models. And I'm just going to drag in, I don't know, here's a brother to bug his new sister. I just click, and if I go back to the Enscape model, look, suddenly he's there, and again, they've got this incredible lighting on them. So, super clicks, super fast, super realistic, super lovely lighting and modeling on figures, and my new kind of go-to way to model. So the challenge of the Mary's Place project was that they wanted a wide diversity of people as far as ethnicities and ages. They needed lots of kids because those are the people that were going to truly represent who their future clients would be. So here's my SketchUp model. Here is the Enscape model at the same time. And because I didn't have the diversity of people that I needed with just the Enscape 3D models, I had to go and find a lot of 2D images to bring into my model. And in fact, if you look at my SketchUp model, I'm going to just turn off what are all the 2D images. You can see that here are the 3D Enscape images. And some of these 3D people are from other locations, so you can see the ones that don't look like these white blobs, these proxies right now, are actually 3D models that I found from other sources. And again, you can see the beauty. If I scroll in here, actually let's scroll in here. Oops. And let's go. So you can see again the lovely light that you get on 3D people emulating the light coming in. So in kind of the traditional style of rendering, you would start with a scene like this. It would render like this, and then you might bring it into Photoshop and start adding all the people in. But now that I have the option to add these 3D people, let me bring that over again, in Enscape, it's always a goal of mine to make sure that the people in my image, and again, here's the final image, look like they're actually telling a story. They're interacting with each other. They're not just scale figures that I've plopped in there to make sense of it. And that was especially true in these Mary's Place images. They really wanted to show the stakeholders and the rest of the public how the people are going to be using the space and how it was going to make them feel. So I tried a new kind of thing, and this time around, which was actually super successful, and I added my 2D people, actually the images themselves, whoops, into the SketchUp model. So if I start clicking on some of these guys, you can see that these are just 2D images. So if I look around, you can see they're all just flat images added. In fact, let me go to this working view, and that will kind of make it more clear about all these people are just 2D images that I've imported into the scene. But the cool thing is they look pretty darn good. And another interesting thing about them, and let me actually show you how I import them first. So I'm going to go back to my SketchUp model. So I played around with a couple different ways of doing this. So first of all, you need to make sure that you have a transparent PNG. If it has a background, it's not going to work. And you need to make sure that you're using image as an image when you import these. And they're going to want to automatically glue to a surface. So if I try to put it in place, it's going to kind of stick to the floor and I have to do some rotating around. So what I actually found easiest was to just glue them to, or put them on a surface that was going to be parallel with their final position. And then you need to unglue from that surface. And then I can just take it and move it over into my model. And you can see here if I bring this over, okay, obviously the scale is not right and the rotation's not right. So I can kind of play around with the scale, and sometimes I will bring in a 3D model that's about the same size to help me kind of figure out if the scale is right. And I'm going to go ahead and also rotate him a little bit. Again, this is way hard with 2 screens. Or without dual screens. Let's see if I can bring him down a little bit so he looks like he's in place. And obviously he needs to be scaled. So I'm not going to spend too much time right now doing this, and you can see in the final how I ended up with where it was. But you can see that it's pretty easy to put these images into your model and then help them, help you tell the story that you're trying to tell for your client. The other thing that's also super interesting about this, I found, is that by doing it this way, and he's a little tricky because his wheels don't all end up on the same plane, is that your models actually cast a shadow already in Enscape. So normally you'd have to come back, and after you added in all your images, you'd have to come back and add in all the shadows. So the shadows aren't perfect, but certainly at first glance, they are, I think most people would buy them, and especially if you don't know Photoshop and don't want to go to the time of adding in shadows on your by your own self, then this is a great alternative. So where do you find these people from? So there's lots of sites that have great images of diverse people. Here's one called Just Not the Same. Lovely. These are real people from all over the world, all sorts of ethnicities. However, if you look at a lot of sites like this and look at under terms of use, you're going to see that they don't have commercial releases. They're non-commercial, which just means they took pictures of people and put them on here, but they didn't get signed releases. So once you start going to the sites where they're actually available for commercial release, you're going to see that the diversity goes down quite a bit. So the site I use the most is mrcutout.com, and you can see if you click on these images, they are pretty real people, and they're all on a transparent background. They're all easy to put into another image. Like the cutout people don't, for the most part, don't have chairs underneath, so you can stick them in somewhere. So I'd say this is my #1 go-to place. If I'm looking for something a little more realistic, so here's Gobo Tree. And you can see that there's way more kind of real people wearing real funky clothes. So one of the problems with this, it does have commercial releases, but you can see almost everything is taken outside. So there's often very sharp, distinct lighting, which somehow can make them not look correct or require some photoshopping to put them into your images. There's also a couple stock images. Dreams Time is one. When you go to these, they have all sorts of images, not just the kinds of images we're looking for. So looking for isolated white background, theoretically is going to bring up more images that's just an image on a white background. Unfortunately, one thing about this site is even if you download one of these and use it, you're going to see that the background isn't transparent. It's actually a white background, meaning you have to take it into Photoshop and remove the background first, which is kind of a pain. But sometimes you can find things here that you can't find other places. Same thing, there's Big Stock. Let's type in the same thing here. White background, isolated person. Kind of the same thing. This one tends to have like these just kind of really stupid, over the top, unrealistic people going on for, I mean, there's some good stuff on here, but I also just find lots of like corny faces, people wearing kind of like corny outfits. So maybe not my first go-to or my second or my third, but it's on my list to look at.